I'm Tavis Westbrook. Been in the industry now since 2004. Flipped my business model to investment real estate essentially as a hyper focus in 2009 after REO. Well, we went after REO, but after basically the market crash, that was kind of our goal is to shift that direction. It originally started with a broker mindset of how do I get paid on the front, and how do I get paid on the back? How do I do, less clients with more reward? And essentially ended up being the guy that was kind of facilitating the whole project from acquisition to design to rehab to sell, and facilitated several other investors for a couple of years until I was able to partner up and form Superior Acquisitions. We ran that leg until 2018, and then been basically running solo since then, as far as the team goes, and working on rebuilding and just restructuring, how we're set up.
And I
But
think,
that's kind of a quick snapshot.
yeah, and it's immense. And so you're, and I think it was stated in the bio, but you've done over 200 now. Is that
That's
flipped or
correct.
models?
Yes. Yep. Yeah. That's either, and some of that might be some hotel, some wholesale mixed in there, but the
Mhm.
majority has been fix and flip. It's kind of our bread and butter. So we took kind of a hiatus in 2019 to 2023. The market, obviously, we all enjoyed that market that was happening at that point in time, and so I was able to actually wholesale quite a bit of projects during that period of time, rather than go dial all the way into the fix and flip. We ended up, cherry picking what we wanted to build our personal portfolio. So during that time, picked up some more 12-month rentals. We picked up some midterm rentals, and then actually picked up some commercial property along the way. So that was great. And it gave me an avenue, or not an avenue, but a vehicle, doing the wholesaling that was, obviously a faster paced product, and less headaches, didn't have to have as big of a team, that kind of thing. But we started seeing some things falling out with that in 2023, and 22 to latter part of 22 to 23, deals started falling out in the 12th hour, so, or the 11th hour. We had wholesale deals tied up, and if you're familiar with how that works, obviously, Ben, you bring me a deal, I say great, I can buy it. In the meantime, I've got 15, 20, 30 other investors that know me that are looking for a deal, and so there might be some meat on the bone that I'm able to then wholesale it to them. And I think it could be a great model. It just, the transparency is the big factor. But the other part to it was making sure that the user end on the backside can actually perform. And we got into a couple of situations where that was getting wonky, or falling out at the end. And it didn't feel good, right? It didn't feel good with my relationship with the lead source and the seller. And, that wasn't my style. So we had a couple deals that, we still made it happen, but I'm one too that, I want to teach the end user, what to do. And I like kind of laid it out on one particular project in Plano, and I gave him kind of the blueprint of what to do with this property, and he didn't listen. And the thing sat on the market. He couldn't move it. And then I was just like, oh my gosh, like I made like $12,000 on that contract, and I could have easily made like 125,000 if I would have taken it down and flipped it. So, um, you know, hard lessons there, but it happens, right? You got to kind of navigate through. They eventually sold that property, but it was nowhere near what I had coached them to do, if you will.
Well, and you and I've had had the opportunity to work on a couple of those deals, and I can tell you, especially for you guys that are on trust and relationships and integrity. I mean, it's paramount when doing deals like this. Tavis, do you just work here in the Dallas Fort Worth area? Because we're pretty fortunate. We've got guys on from all over the country, but mostly here in Texas.
Yeah, so this is obviously where business is focused, and we're such a huge area, right? Like, I mean, ultimately it's like if I've got a deal that's out in Fort
Mhm.
Worth, I mean that's like dealing with something out of state. Like it's just
Yeah.
not something I'm used to dealing with. Back in my traditional real estate days, that was a different story. That I was like, okay, I can look at this within a half mile radius, what's going on in the market, and I definitely dabbled in the traditional space back then. But now, with what we do, our main focus obviously is fix and flip. And with that concept, it's just there's a lot of moving parts to get the guys on board and play in a game outside of that area. So as far as like, our direct fix and flip business, yes, I'd typically stay pretty close to, where we live in Plano. So, we might be 30, 45 minutes out
Hmm.
at max. But, we try to stay kind of where the areas are hot and where they're moving. There's a lot of analytics that go into, the right property,
Right.
and it's not just, the deal on the ARV. It's also putting your hat on as a traditional real estate agent and thinking about it from not only the seller's point of view, but the buyer's point of view, especially in this market. So, we just completed that big project, that seven-figure property up in Frisco. You guys were able to come to the open house. I wish
Absolutely.
more people showed up to the open house because that was an epic open house there with our buddy George playing saxophone. So
You're going up.
that was pretty cool. But it was a Saturday, so I knew it was kind of tricky.
Right.
Nevertheless, we moved that property, but I had to, put a bigger hat on. And it was not just focused on what's going on in that pocket or that neighborhood. We had to think bigger, and I had to think of, buyers with a budget up to 2 million and where could they go?
Right.
And then paying attention to talking to the agents. And, they would tell me, oh, they're looking in Keller, they're looking in Heath, they're looking way up north, they want land. And so it's like, it just gives you a perspective that somebody with that kind of budget has a lot of options. And so how do you become the option, is really what you have to think through when you're doing projects like that. And that's big on traditional real estate too.
Absolutely. And again, I think you have such a keen eye. And the fact that I think every project of yours that I've seen, and again, you stated livable art, and I think that just means every property is unique, regardless of whether it's a Fox and Jacobs home or a true custom, Bob Curlin home like the one we saw there in Frisco. Where did that come from? Where did that experience? Because again, I know that you've won numerous awards, architectural awards. I mean, was it just something you were passionate about it? Did you have some professional schooling? How did that come to be?
Yeah. So, I grew up, I grew up having a passion to draw, and that started probably as far as I can remember being 4 or 5 years old, and just anything pen to paper or marker to pencil, whatever whatever it was. But for me, it was more about you know it was more about drawing than painting. I painted a little bit, but for me, it was always just kind of picking up the utensil that I could draw with, right? And that's kind of where the passion started, early on. And it could be anything that inspired me to draw. If I want to draw, a cool car, or, when lowrider trucks were popular, I'd draw those a lot. To anything, to people, to landscapes, to, whatever. So I obviously was involved in several art classes growing up, starting from elementary school all the way through high school. And it was definitely a passion to pursue art. I had no idea from the upbringing of really what that would translate into to go to school, but I would always kind of just say, when I graduate, I'm going to get a scholarship and go do art. I didn't know what that meant. And I really didn't have the building blocks to even do that. So like I never even applied to a college, it was just kind of like, oh, this is great. Yeah, let's do it. And so, there was just a passionate aspect for, art in general, right? Definitely picking up on that. And along the way, real estate was a piece of that journey. I grew up, and we never, shameless plug, but if you listen to the Real Estate Heavy podcast, I have to see what episode it was, but it was a recent one, and it kind of goes into my life story a little bit. And along the way, we never lived in a house that we owned. So we always either rented one or we were moving or we were evicted and, it was a constant thing. So for me early on, having that home that I could call home was all about, you know, that was a big goal of mine before I even thought that real estate was a career for me. And so at, 21, I was able to buy my first house. But along the way, it's funny going back to like maybe 2000, well, I can't, not 2000, sorry, but I was probably 14, 15 years old and I was in art class and I just freehand a house. Like it was kind of this Mediterranean style. And looking at it now, like the composition's off and it doesn't make a lot of sense, but it was just something that I drew and it was cool.
Beautiful.
And yeah, and it was something that's funny. My mom saves a lot of that stuff, and I'm just like, why do you why do you do that? But she brought it to me, maybe about 10 years ago. Was like, hey, look what I found, and I was like, holy cow. So it's just one of those things that is like there was a passion for it. I obviously was attracted to nice homes and things like that along the way, and then drawing it and just taking those kind of elements and just paying attention to whether it was landscape or clay tile roofs or just different things along the journey as a young person of different things that were intriguing. And then once I got into real estate, so I ended up going into telecom. So art stuff was just kind of a back burner. Played around with designs of tattoos. I mean, a buddy of mine, Walter, and I, did some graffiti back in the day, and he now owns a boutique, advertising agency. Does multi-million dollar contracts. And anyways, we're really good friends, and he lives in Farmers Branch now. But along the way, art was just one of those things. It was always a piece of the pie, if you will. So when I got into real estate, I think the first flip I was ever involved in was like 2005, maybe. I was a year in the business and just being involved in trying to learn the design pieces and piecing everything together and kind of working through it and then just trial and error over time of learning more and becoming more involved and more passionate about it and forward thinking. And now I can't travel anywhere without snapping pictures of a bathroom or a restaurant or a galley or a sitting area in a hotel or whatever it may be. Just something that not only am I capturing the picture, but it's something that's going into my brain and I'm remembering an element. And it's so challenging because sometimes I see things and I tell Tabitha, I'm like, hey, check this out. And she's one of those people that she just can't see it till it's done. And I
Right.
see, I see the transfer. I see the snapshot of what I'm taking a picture of and visualize how that can apply to something I'm doing now. And yeah, I take it for granted because there's a lot of people that can't see that. But I'm like, what do you mean you can't see that? Like, I'm just gonna use this door in this project, or I'm gonna, something like that. But ultimately, the tagline of livable art actually came from my buddy Walter, who owns the advertising firm, and he helped design my TW logo for me years ago. And he's actually the one that kind of came up with that tagline of the livable art. And that was after some awards were won and some new builds that we designed over in White Rock Lake area that we had designed from the ground up. And there was a mid-century modern, aspect that came along with that. And that was inspired from a trip out to Palm Springs, and we went out there, what's his name? John Weber. Are you familiar with John Weber at Compass?
Hmm.
So John had brought a buyer along to a property we did in Oak Cliff years ago. It was a mid-century modern, built 1963. Funny stories. I actually bought it from Josh Shang. He had it. He wholesaled it to me, and then we bought it and took it and ran. And along the way, John Weber had a buyer, and he showed up at the house, and he goes, "Hey man, this is awesome." And he goes, "Have you ever been to Palm Springs?" And this is back when I was partnering with Trey, and I was like, "No, I haven't." And he goes, and at that time we had a lot in White Rock Lake, and he goes, and I said, "Well, yeah, we're thinking mid-century, on this small house, that inspired design." He goes, "If you've never done it, he goes, I've got a house in Palm Springs. I'm going to be there this coming week. You guys want to come, just show up." And so we showed up, and like I had 3 or 4 days, and it was just a mission of, finding these spec builds and and you know, production builders along with spec builders and things like that. Custom homes, money no object stuff, and just went on an went on a journey and just got inspiration. And then we came back and we started designing and building what we built. So a lot of fun in that.
Well, I know I saw all the stuff there in East Dallas and what you did over in Canyon Creek, and the mid-centuries were amazing and award-winning. So, and again, what I hear is that um, it was imprinted here, and you were manifesting it without even realizing it. And today, here you set. And
Yeah.
so, give us that shameless plug about the heavyweights, because I'm sure most of these folks don't know about it. Let them know where to find you, because it's worth jumping on. I've had the pleasure and honor of being one of your guests on that. So hit us real quick on that.
Yeah. So the Real Estate Heavyweights podcast is basically produced here locally in Dallas. You can see my mic setup and everything here. So we do a lot. We don't have a big fancy studio, but we get on and talk. And we're on, all the podcast favorites. So Spotify, Apple Music, anything that you want to find us. We have a YouTube channel as well. A lot of long videos there, of the full episodes versus, any edited stuff. But yeah, come check us out. It's over 130 episodes now. And I think so. Ashton actually, he's the other part of the the heavyweights, and Ashton's been in the business, about 5 years. Kind of a novice, getting his feet wet. He's done several things, but it's been a good dynamic, right? From just the experience I've had and some of the inexperiences he's had and the collaboration that we do. But he kind of put it together and we spearheaded it, and it's been great. We've had a lot of great interviews over the years. Ben, I think you've been on once or twice.
Seems like.
Um, and yeah, it's been great to just put it together and just do it. We haven't really figured out the big purpose behind it, more or less than just kind of building this journey, if you will. It's like it's an audio journal
Yes.
if you kind of
Yes,
take
it
it.
is.
So, but we talk about local stuff going on each week. We talk about, projects that we have going on, the trials and tribulations that go along with that, some disgruntled neighbors here and there, all that kind of stuff. So it's a lot of fun just to kind of dive into, not only the, personal lives, but our traditional and fix and flip business.
Well, and I think that it has a long history. It will be here, and it'll outlive you and I. And I think, when I started this almost 6 years ago, I had no idea where this was going.
Yep.
And I feel like this is just a training module. It's what it is. And I've encouraged new agents and veteran agents to jump on, hit the subscribe button while you're there, but you're going to learn something from a professional who's been doing this for 5 years or 45 years. There's a nugget there. And I think the audience that's on here today, we're all about learning and growing. And I think it's the reason why we're still here. I think it's the reason why everyone on this call is ascending up. I believe that 2026 is going to be your best year, not just yours, Tavis, but I see Jonah and I see Lisa and I see Jessica and Jerry, and I know Pop and Steve and myself included
Yeah,
will be my best year
absolutely.
because I'm manifesting it. I'm making sure that I keep close proximity to greatness, and you're that, my friend. So,
Yeah, I appreciate it, man.
okay, so
Likewise.
tell them this. So you just got back from Arizona and
Yep.
KW Wealth. Give us a nugget. Give us something that you weren't thinking about, but that's now on your mind. Something that came out of the discussion there and the masterminding there. Talk to me.
Oh man. I I'll say this. There's so many things, and it kind of takes me a minute to process, when I'm on the spot like that. And I
Yeah.
have like my notes in front of me now, but um, I one of the things, and we've done some different exercises, I'm sure, throughout KW journeys and different things we've joined, and this was pretty profound. There's usually something like this, some exercise that we're doing, In the classroom, it's essentially like a full day and a half of learning. There's other pieces of networking and stuff that gets filled in. So it's like a 2 day event. But ultimately, they had us write a letter to ourselves in 10 years and the future of, who we're going to be in 10 years and the people in our life. Right. And so um, that's deep, and you go into it. You have older parents, you have older people in the family that, they may not live, that timeline. And then you look at your kids and you're like, holy crap. Like my oldest is 31, about to be 32. I'm like, he's going to be 42. Like what?
Yeah.
So that was pretty profound, and I think a lot of that is that mindset of, manifesting that, we underestimate what we can do in a year, or well, we overestimate what we can do in that year, but we underestimate what we can do in 5 years.
Absolutely.
And it was pretty interesting to look at, what we could possibly do in 10, right?
Yeah.
Or 15. So one of the examples that came up, we all know Grant Cardone. So Grant Cardone at 52 years old was worth $2 million, and he had manifested that he'd be a billionaire. And now so it's 15 years later. So what is that? 67 years old, right? Um, Whatever. I might be getting my math wrong, but essentially, he's 67 years old now, 15 years later, and he's worth over $1 billion. And it was funny. Brett Tanner had a seminar that he was in with his son, and he had some footage back then of, Grant Cardone kind of saying it and projecting it, and the T-shirt he was wearing back there saying "billionaire in the making," and obviously it just goes in with the power of the mind. We had our largest, most successful year last year. And a lot of that was just that manifestation and just planning it, knowing that we could do it and pushing it. And, and we did it. And now that we did it, it's weird because it doesn't feel like I thought it would.
Right.
Now that we're here, now it's just like, oh crap. Okay, now what? Now what do I need to do to, double it now, or, do this and dial it in? And it's weird because I think that I've found a journey along my career in real estate where we do get comfortable and you're kind of like, hey, this is fine. I don't need more.
Right.
But I think it's bigger than that, right? It's bigger than just a dollar amount or
Right.
sensible to that. The idea that you have from building wealth, the freedom that it gives you is unbelievable.
Right.
And I think that's the goal that everybody should work towards. And it's not just from a dollar point. It's from, we were very blessed this summer. My mother-in-law got sick and basically died and was recovered and lived and survived, and she's now home, and it's unbelievable. But this exercise allowed me to kind of even think back to that and go, what a blessing it was for Tabitha and I to spend so much time there. And my mother-in-law never went a day or a night without one of her daughters, somebody in the room with her through that journey. And I think if that wasn't the case, there's good possibility she would not have made it. Um, with everything she was going through. So just the ability to be able to do that is unbelievable. A year ago, my biological dad I never knew passed away in October 23 or October 24. And, was connected with that side of the family for the first time in my life. And they reached out right before Christmas and was like, yeah, we're going to do a service, and just the ability to say, sure,
Yeah.
we'll be there, and book a plane and jump on a plane and go and get an Airbnb and be able to like spend time with that side of the family. Like, that's where building wealth and, the concept of wealth and freedom comes from,
Yeah.
is things like that.
Amen. I think it's the journey from success to significance, and I think we're so fortunate. I know how blessed I am to be in this position, and now I love the fact that I can try to make a difference, not just for me and mine, because we're good, but
Hmm.
I try to touch as many people as I can because. We know how short this journey of life can be, and it's so unpredictable.
Yeah.
And again,
I
I say it all the time. I mean, and I got it initially from Emmerich, who stole it from someone else. Relationships can take us places that money can't, and relationships are rocket ships.
yeah.
And so, my friends, continue to surround yourself with this type of energy and this type of greatness, because your ascension up this hill, it's a journey and is amazing. And like you said, in the next 5 years, some of us can't even imagine where we can be. As long as you allow yourself to think big and bold and stay focused, you'll get
When
there.
I wanted to say one more thing in that, because you and I have had this discussion, and it's one of those things, especially in real estate. We're looking at that bottom line, we're looking at that dollar, and these masterminds aren't cheap, right? They're expensive, and I think it's hard to make that plunge and pay that kind of money into something that you don't see a direct result right away. But exactly what Ben's saying, one of the best things about this last mastermind I was in, there was only 45 of us in the room. Like in the max, I think it's been maybe 75, 80. So you see the same faces now. This is my third one I've been to. And the first one was in May. I think I joined in maybe April or March last year because I told myself like it's time to, invest myself. I need, I need mentors. I need to surround myself around other people that are thinking bigger and different things and being in rooms with people doing bigger things than you, whatever that may be. Um, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a monetary value, right? It's just something that you're surrounding yourself around
That's
people
right.
that are thinking bigger, if you will. And so joining again, it was, it's a big commitment, but it's one of those things that I think Brett Tammer does a good job. And he goes, "What's your amount of money that you spend on entertainment versus education?" And that's a hard pill to swallow because even
Yeah.
though this was a big commitment, I know I don't spend near as much,
Yep.
on education as I do on entertainment, and so in entertainment being, vacations included and, anything, right? That
Drinking,
that
yes,
anything you're doing to, pass the time,
that's right.
the nice dinners and, stuff like that, which, we've gotten to a place where you spend money for dinner and you don't look back.
Right.
Um, and we talked about that in the Wealth Ladder. There's a book out. It's called the Wealth Ladder. I don't have it in front of me, but it's a great book to read, and if you guys are looking for something. But and I can circle back. You could put it on here once I pull it. I read it. I just can't remember who the author is. But anyways, that I wanted to just add that piece that if you guys are on the fence, I know it's a down year for a lot of people. A lot of people can't see investing back into themselves with
That's
something
right.
like that, but
That's right.
it's well worth doing because not only did we have our best year ever, it's did a lot of things, in the background, right? In your mind, where your mind's going a lot of times throughout, different things that we've struggled with, and it keeps you going.
Well, and investing in yourself was the operative word there. I mean, as much as I travel for business, it's crazy. I'm the other side of 15, almost $20,000. But again, that's easy for me, and I know that's an investment, and it helps me personally, it helps me professionally, it helps everything. So for those of you who can do, and those who can't right now, just know that it's in your future. And just continue to join in on this platform each and every week. I'm going to bring you to meet, just like
Yep.
I did today. And I told you, my friend, it moves so quickly. And here it is. We're already out of time.
Money, 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 money.